Thank you very much and good morning to all of you. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting us to this very important debate. I think the importance cannot be underestimated. It's a topic that deserves more attention. It's a topic that will not go away, unfortunately, anytime soon. Apologies for not being able to join you in presence, but the events in Libya and Morocco over the last few days have made that I needed to stay here in the Emergency Response Coordination Center, and that is where we are here today. And that is very much about our role. European cooperation is becoming increasingly important in disaster management, and that's why we have created, already 20 years ago, a European Union civil protection mechanism, which is basically a framework for cooperation between the 27 EU member states and 9 additional participating countries. So 36 countries that work together on preventing disasters, more and more important, as we heard from the previous speakers also. Work together on preparing for disasters, making sure we have capacities available to support each other, that we can work together, as Romain was saying. And finally, also work together on responding to disasters. And whenever a disaster hits a country anywhere in the world, that country can ask for assistance if it becomes overwhelmed by that disaster. Rather than contacting 36 individual countries, they can contact one crisis center, the Emergency Response Coordination Center here in Brussels, and that is my role in all of this. We manage that crisis center and we manage the operations of the crisis center. So they can contact that Emergency Response Coordination Center for help, and we will then coordinate with these 36 countries to try and mobilize the right type of support at the right time. And that European cooperation is based upon these same twin principles that Romain mentioned. It's about subsidiarity. Member states are responsible for managing their own disasters. That's clear. Disaster response should always be done as close as possible to the event. But it's also based upon that twin principle of solidarity. And I think with what we're seeing now in terms of more extreme weather, changing risk landscape, it's clear that we will have more and more situations which overwhelm individual countries' abilities to deal with it. And international cooperation and European cooperation are going to become even more important. And I have a few slides. I will be very brief, but perhaps just to show the first slide, this is really, it's a very complicated map that you will see, but it's there to show the intensity of the cooperation we've had this year. You can go to the next slide, Vincent. This summer, we have seen Europe battered by heat waves, by wildfires, by floods, often simultaneously. And so on 12 occasions this year, thank you very much, on 12 occasions this year, countries got overwhelmed and asked for European support or support from other participating countries in the civil protection mechanism. With a little frame, you will see the names of the countries that asked for assistance. And in color, you will see all of the countries that provided assistance. And you'll see that some countries have been providing assistance and requesting assistance. Some countries have been asking for forest fire-related support, others for flood support. We've had many operations inside the EU, but we were even mobilized, we were even requested by Canada and Chile for support with wildfires this year, and in both cases we were able to send several hundreds of firefighters from Europe to these countries. If we go to the next slide, then I just want to highlight the incredible speed with which the situation is developing. This has been a summer of records. On the 6th of August, for instance, we had for the first time in the history of the European cooperation on civil protection, we have on the same day a request for assistance with floods in Europe and a request for assistance to deal with forest fires. This has never happened before, that we have to simultaneously mobilize support on the same day for floods and in one part of Europe, that was Slovenia, and for forest fires in Cyprus at that time. Secondly, if you zoom in on the wildfires in Europe, the total burned area in Europe this year is 40% higher than the average burned area in Europe over the last 20 years. So you see this incredible pattern of exponential increase in fires, and Greece certainly knows everything about that because you have the largest forest fire on record in the EU this year. I'm talking about the fire close to Alexandroupolis, which burned for several weeks and burned a total of close to 100,000 hectares. I mean, if you try to imagine 100,000 hectares, think of the whole size of the Paris region and Berlin together. It's huge by all standards. And in response, and that's another record, we have deployed sort of the largest ever aerial rescEU deployment with a very high number of aircraft and helicopters. There were 11 planes, 1 helicopter deployed by 7 different member states in the same time period. There were 6 ground teams with a total of over 600 firefighters busy in Greece helping out. We had pre-positioned ground teams in Greece as well as in France and Portugal this year. So there has been a very substantial cooperation throughout the summer to help countries deal with these emergencies. And the same happened in Slovenia and in Italy with the floods, where also there these countries asked for support from other member states, and a lot of equipment and teams were mobilized. Next slide, please. I know this conference is focusing on natural disasters, but just to be very clear that the increase in natural disasters is just one part of the challenge we're currently facing. We all remember the incredible complexity associated with COVID, and there's very worrying signs about health risks for the future also. Our security context is changing very rapidly in the east, but also in the south, as you know. In Ukraine, we are currently managing our largest, longest, and most complex civil protection operation ever. So far, our member states have provided through this system close to 100,000 tons of assistance going from field hospitals to shelter equipment, water purification, all sorts of medication, etc., etc. Total value of the assistance that has been mobilized by all of our countries in support of Ukraine is now around 750 million euros, so it is quite significant. We have new risks related to cyber, to disruptions on critical infrastructure. We see security developments in the south, which are time and again require evacuation operations. Think about Afghanistan, but think also about Niger, Sudan. We're seeing hybrid attacks. It's no longer a concept for the future. It's something which is happening now. Think about the forced migration from Belarus to Lithuania, which also resulted in request for assistance. So the next slide will show you what the result of that is, and it's just very simply and plainly an exponential increase in operations that we have to run. For a very long time, European operations in response to disasters were around 20-25 per year. With COVID, that increased to above 100. with COVID and Ukraine in 2022, that increased to over 220 requests for assistance. Of course, this year, COVID is zooming out a little bit, but we still see a very high level of requests for assistance, which simply illustrates the point I was making, that with increasing risks on the security side and a changing natural risk landscape, we are forced to work much more together than ever before. And just to finish off, I'll try and give a few ideas in the next slides on what we're doing to better prepare for that future. First of all, we need to step up preparedness. We need to have more capacities. We need to have more diverse capacities. We need to have more smart capacities. And we need to do that, obviously, at member states level. And the European Union is providing massive funding to support that. We're currently, for instance, financing a 1.5 billion financing to support Greece on disaster management, and that includes 700 million for civil protection. But we also need to step up preparedness at EU level. If we could go back 2 slides to the civil protection pool, that would be great. At European level, we have created a civil protection pool, which is basically a combination of teams that are available in different member states. There we are, that's the overview. So these are member states teams which have to undergo a quality test, a quality training, which have to be certified and which are in principle available for support to other countries, to other member states. And teams that are part of this pool then receive a certain level of EU funding as an incentive for member states to make more capacities available. Next slide shows the next step, basically, which is rescEU, which is a strategic reserve that we are creating since 2020. That strategic reserve is fully funded by the European Union. It is hosted by member states, managed by interested member states, but it is deployed on the invitation at the request of the ERCC, the Emergency Response Coordination Center here in Brussels. And you can see how quickly this is developing. We now have reserves of medical capacities, CBRN capacities. We have a strategic reserve of shelter items, transport, energy items, and we have a fleet of forest firefighting aircraft, and that is illustrated in the next slide.
Hans,
yep.
I'm going to have to ask you to just round up your comments if you could, so we can.
I will. I'm sorry. I'm just running through this very quickly. Then, so on forest fires, we have doubled the fleet. So we now have 28 aircraft available across the European Union, which are on standby to support countries affected by forest fires at any moment. Next slide, and that's the overview of the overall rescEU capacity. So it just shows the intensity of the cooperation. 2 words, if I may, on the future, and I think my colleagues, next slide, my colleagues have already mentioned the importance of prevention. What I would like to add to it is the importance of developing more strategic anticipation and foresight. We need to really invest more in better analytical capabilities across the European Union, more robust monitoring, information sharing, more cross-sectoral coordination, and we need to invest in more response capacities. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.